The scent of pine and damp earth was the first thing to greet you in the northern territories. It clung to the ancient stone of the castle, seeped into the heavy tapestries that held back the mountain chill, and whispered through the golden hair of my daughter as she pressed her small nose to the corridor window. Even after scrubbing in the servants' quarters, I could smell it on my own skin, the indelible mark of a place that felt no warmth for our presence. "Mama," Emma whispered, her breath clouding the cold glass, "why do their eyes look like that, like little lanterns in the dark?" At 6, her hair was the color of summer wheat, and her curiosity was a force I could barely contain. She had my eyes, people said, though I often wished she'd inherited her late father's gift for fading into the background. That was the art of survival here. "Because they're different from us, sweetheart," I murmured, drawing her back from the pain. My hands, I noticed, trembled slightly as I smoothed the worn fabric of her blue dress, a garment I had mended more times than I could count. "We should return to the kitchens." Mistress Karen doesn't care for wanderers, but Emma's attention had already been captured. A door at the hallway's end stood slightly ajar, a sliver of golden lamplight spilling across the dark flagstones like a forbidden path. Before I could grasp her shoulder, she slipped from my reach and darted toward it with the fearless curiosity that both awed and terrified me. "Emma, no," I hissed, my voice a thread of sound. We were servants here, humans in a fortress of wolves who could end our existence without a second thought. It had been 3 months since we'd fled the war-torn eastern provinces, 3 months of making ourselves small and silent in these cold mountains. We took what work we could find and prayed to go unnoticed. My mother's final words, spoken with her last breath, echoed in my mind. "Where there is no path, make one with kindness. Where there is no hope, plant seeds of compassion." The strongest walls fall not to force, but to a gentle hand that refuses to strike back. She had been a healer in our village, beloved and gentle. I had inherited her fair hair and supposedly her gift for soothing others, though I'd never felt gifted at anything except enduring. The locket around my neck, her locket, simple silver with a tiny pressed flower sealed inside, felt heavy as I hurried after my daughter. It was the last tangible piece of my life before my husband, David, fell in the territorial wars, before we became refugees, before I learned that humans without pack protection were less than nothing in this world of ancient bloodlines and primal power. Emma had already pushed the door open. I caught it before it could swing shut, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The room beyond stole my breath. It was a gallery, its walls lined with imposing portraits that spanned centuries. Alphas, I realized. Their painted eyes, rendered in dark oils, seemed to track my movement, their expressions of absolute authority making my knees weaken even before their images. The air smelled of aged wood, old leather, and something wild that raised the fine hairs on my arms. "Emma, we cannot be here," I urged, reaching for her hand. "This is a private place." "Mama, look." She pointed, her small finger unwavering, not at the fearsome alphas, but at a portrait hanging slightly apart from the others. It was not of a regal wolf, but of a young woman. She had hair like mine, catching the lamplight, and eyes that held a story of both sorrow and formidable strength. She wore a simple gown devoid of regalia, and around her neck. My hand flew to my own throat. The woman in the painting wore an identical locket. "She looks like you, Mama," Emma said, her voice full of wonder. "Same pretty hair, same necklace. Is that grandmother?" The floor seemed to tilt. It was impossible. My mother had never left our village, had never spoken of the north. Yet the resemblance was undeniable, not just the locket, which had been in our family for generations, but the shape of her face, the determined gentleness in her eyes that I saw in my own reflection each morning. "Who are you?" a voice inquired from behind us. It was deep, cold as the mountain streams that cut through the territory. "And why are you in my private gallery?" I spun, instinctively pushing Emma behind the folds of my skirt. The man filling the doorway was everything I expected the Alpha King to be, and yet somehow more. He was tall enough to require a slight duck beneath the frame, with dark hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes that held an actual, faint amber glow in the dim light. He wore unadorned black, but power radiated from him like heat from a banked fire. This was Sebastian Ravencroft, ruler of the Northern Territories, a name spoken by humans in hushed, fearful tones. I'd seen him only once before, a distant figure during a staff welcoming. Now, mere feet away, the weight of his presence felt like a physical pressure. "Your Majesty," I managed, dropping into the clumsy curtsy I'd practiced. My voice, to my surprise, remained steady. "My deepest apologies, we didn't mean to intrude. My daughter was curious and I was not vigilant enough. It will not happen again." His luminous gaze moved from me to Emma, who peered from behind my dress with her characteristic lack of fear. He was silent for a long moment, a predator assessing, then his eyes shifted past us to the portrait on the wall. Something in his stern face fractured, a fleeting crack revealing shock or recognition or a grief so profound it was palpable. His jaw tightened. When he looked back at me, his stare held a new, unnerving intensity. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly, nodding toward my neck. My fingers closed around the locket. It was my mother's and her mother's before her. It has been in my family for generations. "What was your mother's name?" The question was sharp, a blade in the quiet room. "Catherine," I whispered, confusion tangling with my fear. "Catherine Ashford." "But she died 2 years ago in the get out." His command was barely a whisper, yet it carried the force of a gale. I grabbed Emma's hand and moved immediately. "Both of you, now." We took 3 steps before Emma's small, clear voice pierced the tension. "But sir, why is my mama's picture on your wall?" I froze. Every instinct screamed to flee, but my legs refused to obey. Sebastian Ravencroft stared at my daughter, his expression one I had never seen, a man gazing upon a ghost, a memory given form. When he spoke again, his voice was rough, almost shattered. "That is not your mother's picture." His amber eyes found mine, and in them I saw a depth of longing and loss that stole my breath. "That is my mate, my Luna. The woman who vanished 26 years ago, 3 months pregnant with my heir." The world seemed to stop. 26 years, 3 months pregnant. My mother had always been evasive about my father, about her past before arriving in our village with a newborn and a sealed history. I had assumed shame, a scandal perhaps, not this. "That's impossible," I breathed, even as my mind began its frantic calculations. The locket, the resemblance, her constant warnings to avoid the Northern Territories, to never let those with golden eyes look too closely. Her deathbed plea for me to always wear the locket, to never reveal our origins. "Some secrets are kept not because they are shameful, but because they are dangerous," she had said, her grip fierce. "Promise me you will keep yours safe, Isla. Promise me you will never let them find you." Sebastian took a step forward. I stepped back, pulling Emma with me, but his gaze held no predatory intent now. He looked at me as one looks at a miracle they dare not believe in. "Your age," he said hoarsely. "Tell me your age." 26, I whispered. "I turned 26 last spring." The sound he made was scarcely human, a cross between a growl and a sob. His hand lifted, trembling as if to touch my face, then fell back to his side. "Catherine," he breathed. She called herself Catherine, but her true name was Katarina Blackthorn. She was, his voice cracked. She was everything, and they told me she was dead. After she vanished, they found her torn garments by the river, blood on the stones. They told me rogues had taken her, that neither she nor the child could have survived. Emma's hand squeezed mine. I could feel the questions gathering in her small form. "Your Majesty," I began, but he cut me off with a sharp gesture. "Sebastian," he corrected roughly. "If you are, if she," he seemed unable to form a complete sentence, his legendary composure in ruins. "The locket, may I see it?" Every fiber of my being shouted to refuse, to run. But the desperate hope in his eyes called to the part of me nurtured by my mother's gentle teachings. With unsteady hands, I unclasped the chain and held it out. He took it as if it were spun glass, opening the delicate clasp with reverent care. Inside, pressed between two tiny circles of glass, was the small purple flower, mountain wolf's bane, my mother had called it, though she never said why she cherished it. Sebastian stared at it, and when he looked up, tracks of moisture glistened on his face. "I gave this to her," he whispered. "The night I asked her to be my Luna, I told her that even this poisonous flower had its purpose, that even things the world feared could be beautiful." A broken sound escaped him. She laughed and said I was talking about myself. She wore it every day. The implications crashed over me, wave after terrifying wave. If his words were truth, then my mother had been his destined partner, the Luna of this territory. She had been carrying his child when she fled, which meant, "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, that cannot be. My mother was human. I am human. We don't have." "Your daughter," Sebastian interrupted, his gaze shifting to Emma with sudden, fierce intensity. "How old is she?" 6, I said automatically, then understood his unspoken question. "But she is human as well. Her father was human. There is nothing. Show me her birth record, her father's name." The blood drained from my face. There was no official record. David had died 6 months before Emma was born, one of countless human casualties in a border skirmish that barely made mention in the news. When Emma arrived, with her golden hair and eyes that sometimes seemed to catch the light in an unusual way, I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself she was simply a beautiful, normal child. But there had been moments, scraped knees that healed too quickly, knowledge of things she shouldn't know, conversations with animals as if she expected a reply. Moments when my mother's locket felt warm against my skin and old, half-understood warnings stirred in my memory. Sebastian watched me, and I saw the moment he read the truth in my silence. His eyes widened and he looked at Emma with such raw, naked longing it made my chest ache. "How much does she know?" he asked quietly. "Nothing," I said firmly. "She knows nothing because there is nothing to know. We are servants here, Your Majesty. We are merely trying to survive. Whatever you believe, I do not believe," he interrupted, his voice regaining a thread of strength. "I know, you are my daughter, Isla, Katarina's daughter." "Which makes Emma," he looked at my child with something akin to awe. "Emma is my granddaughter, the heir to my heir." The words hung in the air, not as a blessing, but as a sentence. For if this was real, our fragile existence in the shadows was over. I had learned enough of pack politics in 3 months to know that heirs were not just family, they were assets, pieces in a dangerous game played by creatures who viewed humans as prey. "We should go," I said, reaching for the locket. But Sebastian closed his hand around it, his fingers warm and surprisingly gentle as they enveloped mine. "Please," he said, and the raw plea in that single word made me pause. "Do not run, not as she did. Allow me to explain. Let me tell you of your mother, of what happened, of the why." A howl pierced the night outside, long, low, and mournful. Sebastian's head snapped toward the window, his body coiling with tension. When he looked back, urgency hardened his features. "Someone approaches, the council. They cannot see you here, cannot know of this, not yet." He pressed the locket back into my palm. "Return to your quarters, speak to no one, I will send for you tomorrow." But Emma had gone rigid beside me, her small hand crushing mine. When I looked down, her eyes had changed. They glowed with the same soft amber light as Sebastian's, bright and wild in the dim gallery. "Mama," she whispered, her voice distant and strange. "Mama, they're coming for us, the bad ones. They've been waiting for us to be found." In that moment, watching my daughter's eyes shine with impossible light, feeling the truth of a hidden heritage settle over me like a shroud, seeing Sebastian Ravencroft gaze upon us with the fierce protectiveness of a wolf who has recovered his lost pack. I knew my mother's warnings had come too late. We had been found, and nothing would ever be the same. the servants' quarters held the close, tired scent of lye soap and shared hardship. 30 women crowded into a space meant for half that number, sleeping on narrow cots with thin blankets that did little against the mountain's deep chill. Emma and I shared the corner spot, the one closest to the drafty window that others shunned. I preferred it. On clear nights, I could see a sliver of stars and pretend for a fleeting moment that we were somewhere safe under an open sky. Tonight, sleep was a distant country. Emma had finally drifted off an hour ago, curled tight against my side, her thumb in her mouth. A habit she'd broken at 4, but that returned whenever fear took hold. Her eyes had stopped glowing the moment we'd left the gallery, fading back to their normal blue-green, but she had clung to me the entire silent walk back, her small body tense. "They're coming for us, the bad ones," the words echoed in the quiet dark. Children did not speak like that. 6-year-olds did not predict danger with such chilling certainty. They did not have eyes that shone like captured moonlight. But if Sebastian Ravencroft's impossible claim held truth, if my mother had truly been his Luna, if I carried wolf blood in my veins despite my human form, then Emma was not merely a child. She was a latent legacy, something the world of rigid hierarchies and ancient bloodlines was not prepared to acknowledge. My fingers found the locket at my throat, tracing its familiar, cool shape. For 26 years, my mother had guarded this secret. 26 years of moving under shadows, of uprooting our lives whenever questions grew too pointed, of teaching me to be plain, quiet, forgettable. I had thought it the paranoia of a grieving widow, a woman hardened by loss. Now I saw it for what it was, a precise, desperate campaign to hide me from a threat far more specific than a cruel world. Where there is no path, make one with kindness. Had she been kind when she fled? Had Sebastian been cruel? The broken man in the gallery, his composure shattered by a locket and a resemblance, did not align with the monster my mother must have feared. Unless the monster was not him at all, but the world that surrounded him. A soft, insistent knock at the door cut through the heavy silence. It was past midnight. No one came to the servants' quarters at this hour unless there was dire news or dire trouble. Isla Ashford. The voice was female, cultured, and threaded with an impatience that spoke of unaccustomed waiting. The Alpha King requires your presence in his study. Immediately. Around me, the women stirred. Mistress Karen, the head housekeeper whose disdain for us was a palpable force, sat up on her cot near the door, her sharp eyes narrowing in the gloom. "The king doesn't require scullery maids at midnight," she said, her voice like grinding stones. "What foolishness have you brought to my doorstep, girl?" My mouth went dry. Say nothing to anyone, Sebastian had ordered, but to refuse a royal summons was a different kind of danger. "I do not know, mistress," I said, keeping my voice low and careful as I extracted myself from Emma's sleeping grip. She made a small, protesting sound but did not wake. "I will go and discover the reason." "I'll watch the child," Karen said, though her tone made the offer sound like a sentencing. "But if you've drawn trouble to this house, don't think your pretty face will buy you mercy. You'll be out in the snow before dawn." I nodded, unable to trust my voice further, and followed the woman who had knocked. She was a wolf. I could see it in the predatory grace of her movements, the way her eyes caught the faint lamplight and reflected it back. She wore the fitted black leathers of the king's personal guard, weapons subtly outlined against her form. We walked in silence through corridors I had only ever cleaned. The castle revealed itself in layers, the worn utilitarian back passages where humans twalled invisibly than the formal. Echoing halls where wolves conducted their affairs, and finally, as we ascended a spiral staircase that coiled up into the heart of the mountain, keep the private domain of the pack's highest echelons. The guard Maya, I would learn, stopped before a heavy oak door carved with a tableau of wolves, hunting, howling at a crescent moon, sheltering their young. She knocked twice, then entered without awaiting a reply. "The human, Your Majesty," she announced, her tone neutral but her keen eyes missing nothing as they flicked between Sebastian and me. "Thank you, Maya, you may go." He stood beside a massive desk strewn with maps and parchment, a crystal glass of amber liquid held loosely in his hand. He looked older than he had hours before, weariness etched into the lines of his face as if our encounter had drained something vital from him. "And Maya," he added as she turned to leave, "no one speaks of this on my authority." She bowed, a crisp, military motion, and departed, the door closing with a soft, definitive click. For a long moment, we simply regarded one another. In the steady glow of the desk lamp, I could see details missed in the gallery's gloom. The silver threads woven through his dark hair, the fine scars marking the backs of his hands, the immense weight of rule settled in the set of his shoulders. This was a man who had held power for decades, who had navigated challenges I could not fathom, and he claimed to be my father. The thought was a strange, painful twist in my chest. "Sit," he said finally, gesturing to a worn leather chair near the hearth where a low fire crackled. "Please, I know you must be frightened, but I give you my word, my sacred oath, that no harm will come to you or your daughter while you are under my protection." I sat because my legs would no longer support me, not from trust. "Why have you summoned me? You said tomorrow." I could not wait. He moved to the chair opposite, lowering himself into it with a heavy sigh. Up close, the tension in him was a live wire, barely contained. All evening, I have been scouring old records, correspondence, anything that might shed light on what happened 26 years ago, and I found something. He leaned forward, pulling a folder of aged parchment from his desk. "Letters from your mother, hidden in a compartment of my old writing desk, a place only she knew." My breath caught. "Letters to whom?" "To you." His voice grew rough with restrained emotion. "Written in the months before she disappeared. She never sent them, of course. But she wrote them anyway, as if," he stopped, swallowed hard, "as if she knew she would not be there to tell you herself." He held out a single sheet. With trembling hands I took it. The handwriting was unmistakably my mother's, though it was a younger, less guarded script than I knew. "My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, then I have failed to keep you safe, and for that I am so very sorry. There are things you must know, truths I have hidden, because knowledge itself can be a death sentence in a world ruled by wolves. Your father is Sebastian Ravencroft, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. I loved him with a desperation that frightened me, and he loved me the same way, or so I believed. But love among wolves is complicated by politics, by ancient laws, by councils who see human mates as weakness rather than strength. When I discovered I was pregnant with you, I was the happiest I had ever been. But that happiness lasted only 3 days. On the 4th, I overheard a conversation I was never meant to hear. Council members discussing how to eliminate the human problem before it could produce an heir. They spoke of making it look like an accident, a tragedy, a rogue attack. They were planning to kill us, my darling, you and me both, the words blurred. I looked up at Sebastian, my own shock mirrored in his ravaged face. "I never knew," he said, the words hoarse, ripped from him. "I swear to you on everything I hold sacred, I never knew they were planning this. If I had known, if she had told me, I would have torn apart anyone who threatened her, the entire council if necessary. But she didn't trust you to protect her," I whispered, the statement hanging between us like an accusation. "She trusted herself more, she ran." He flinched as if struck. "Yes, and I spent 26 years believing she was dead, that I had failed her, that some rogue pack had taken everything that gave my life meaning." He stood abruptly, turning to the window that looked out over the black, sleeping mountains. "I searched for months. I sent out hunters, trackers, followed every whisper. We found her dress torn and bloody by the river, signs of a struggle. The council told me to accept it, to move on, to take another mate and produce an heir the proper way. But you didn't know, the word was a vow, fierce and final. I could not, the mate bond, it is not something humans can fully comprehend. When you find the one person whose soul fits yours, losing them is like losing half of yourself. I felt her. Out there somewhere, alive but unreachable. I clung to that feeling even when everyone told me I was mad. I forced my eyes back to the letter, to my mother's voice from beyond the grave. I am going to disappear, little one. I am going to make them think I am dead, and then I am going to find somewhere far from wolves, far from politics, far from the danger that being Sebastian's heir would bring you. I will raise you human, safe, ordinary. Your father is a good man beneath the crown and the duty, but he is also the Alpha King, bound by laws older than nations, surrounded by wolves who would see you dead rather than acknowledge a half-human heir. I cannot take that chance. I cannot risk your life on the hope that love will be enough. If something happens to me, if you find yourself drawn back to the north, remember this: you are stronger than you know. Your father's blood runs in your veins, but so does mine. Human blood, stubborn and resilient and capable of surviving anything. Do not let them make you ashamed of either half. I love you, my precious girl. I am sorry I will not be there to tell you these things in person, but I need you to live, even if it means I never see you grown. It was signed simply, Mother. And beneath the signature was a tiny, pressed wolf's bane flower, a twin to the one in my locket. She protected you, Sebastian said softly, returning to his seat. The only way she knew how, by erasing herself, by becoming someone else entirely. By ensuring no one would ever connect Katarina Blackthorne, Luna of the Northern Territories, with Catherine Ashford, the village healer with a mysterious past. And it worked, I whispered, the paper fragile in my hands. For 26 years it worked. Until I was desperate enough to seek work in the one place she warned me never to go. Why did you come here? He asked. If she warned you, because we were starving. The words came out harder than I intended. Because after David died, his family blamed me and drove us out. Because humans without pack protection are less than nothing in the borderlands. Because winter was coming and Emma was growing thin and I had no other choice. I met his gaze squarely. I would have walked into a dragon's den if it meant feeding my daughter. Your granddaughter, he said, and something shifted in his expression, a dawning respect, a recognition of a spirit as fierce as his mate's had been. Tell me about Emma, he said, leaning forward. Tell me everything. And so, in the quiet of the firelit study, I did. I spoke of my pregnancy shadowed by grief, of Emma's birth that had been strangely, mercifully easy, of her first cry that had sounded, to my ears, oddly like a keen. I told him of the small mysteries, scrapes that healed overnight, her uncanny way with creatures, the dreams she described of running on 4 legs through forests she had never seen. And tonight, he asked quietly, when her eyes changed. That was the first time I could not explain it away, I admitted. There have been flickers, moments I told myself were tricks of the light, but tonight she knew, she felt danger coming. How is that possible? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. If she has never shifted, never been taught of pack bonds or wolf senses. Because blood knows blood, Sebastian said, his eyes distant. Because she carries the alpha line, and that means instincts deeper than teaching, older than memory. It means, he stopped, his expression darkening. It means she will be in terrible danger once the council learns of her existence. Fear, cold and sharp, lanced through me. Then we leave tonight, we disappear just as she did. No, his voice held the full weight of his command, freezing me in place. Running did not save Katarina, it only delayed the inevitable, and now there are witnesses. Maya saw you, others will have noted my summons. By morning, rumors will be spreading through this castle like frost. The council will demand answers. Then what do we do? My hands gripped the arms of the chair, knuckles white. We fight. He leaned forward, intensity burning in his amber gaze, but not with claws and teeth, with truth, with legitimacy, with the very laws they think they can twist. He reached out slowly, giving me time to withdraw, and took my hand. His skin was warm, his grip gentle but unbreakable. I am going to acknowledge you, Isla, publicly, as my daughter, my heir, my lost Luna's gift to this pack. I will make it impossible for anyone to touch you or Emma without declaring war on me directly. They will never accept it, I breathed. A human heir, they will tear you apart politically. Let them try. The wolf was there in his eyes, dangerous and protective. I have spent 26 years ruling alone, compromising, making decisions for the good of the pack as defined by old men in council robes. And where has it left me? A cold castle. No mate, no child, no future. They took that from me once. I will not let them take it from me again. He stood, drawing me up with him. Tomorrow at noon I am calling an emergency assembly. Every wolf in the territory will attend, and before them all I will introduce you and Emma as my family. He cupped my face, his thumb brushing away a tear I had not felt fall. I know you are frightened. I know you have every reason not to trust me or this, but I am asking you, begging you, to give me the chance your mother did not. The chance to protect you both the way I should have protected her. I wanted to say no. Every lesson of survival screamed it, but looking into his eyes, seeing the decades of grief and the desperate, fragile hope, I felt my resolve fracture. And beneath that, faint but undeniable, I felt a pull, a thread tied to my very core, connecting me to this man, this place, this impossible truth. Blood calling to blood. What about Emma? I asked. What do we tell her? The truth, he said simply. She deserves to know who she is, and she deserves the choice when she is old enough to claim that heritage or walk away from it. She is 6 years old. I know, he said, his voice softening, which is why we will protect her childhood. Keep her safe from the scheming and the ugliness, but we cannot hide what she is, Isla, not anymore. Tonight proved that. Her instincts are awakening. Soon they will demand expression. A cold thought crystallized. The council members who threatened my mother, are they still here, still in power? Sebastian's face became a mask of cold fury. 3 of them are. They have advised me for decades. They sit in my hall and pretend to serve the pack's interests. And you would announce me before them, let them know exactly who I am. He gripped my shoulders, his gaze unwavering. It is taking away their greatest weapon, secrecy. In the shadows you can be made to disappear. In the full light of the pack, protected by my direct claim, touching you becomes treason. They will not risk open rebellion, not now. You are betting our lives on that belief. I am betting our lives on my ability to protect my family, he corrected. Something I should have done 26 years ago. I failed your mother. I will not fail you. I will not fail Emma. Even if it costs me the crown. The words hung between us, heavy with promise and peril. In the firelight, he looked every inch the alpha of legend, powerful and resolute. But I had learned long ago that legends were rarely truthful guides for reality. Still, what choice did I have? To run and spend a lifetime watching over our shoulders, or to stand beside this man who claimed my blood and face whatever came with the might of an alpha's line at our backs? My mother had chosen to run, and it had cost her everything. Perhaps it was time to walk a different path. All right, I whispered, the word feeling like a leap from a great height. We will stay, we will face them. A breath I did not realize he was holding escaped him. He pulled me into a brief, fierce hold, not an embrace of intimacy, but one of profound, paternal relief and solidarity. I promise you, daughter, on my life, on my honor, they will not get the chance. As I made my way back through the sleeping castle, I passed a window overlooking a lower courtyard. There, in the pooled shadows between stone walls, I saw them. 4 figures in dark council robes, heads bent together in a tight, conspiratorial circle. Even from this distance, I could sense the malevolence of their plotting, a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. Emma had been right, the bad ones were coming, and tomorrow we would meet them in the unforgiving light of day.